Welcome to Evilive. This is the live media commentary show that answers the question, just how long of a spoon do you need to sup with the devil? Subscribe if you're new to the channel, because today we are reviewing Jordan Peele's Nope. As is, one of those things, whenever you see a film and you see that, or you hear the title of the film in the film, this is said a lot. For obvious reasons throughout the course of the film, of course, but it is one of those things where it just stood out like, who's going to say it? How often are they going to say it? And it turns out, everyone, all the time. All right, so initial thoughts about this. I actually really dug this show. I watched a couple reviews when it was initially released a couple weeks back, and I really thought it was going to be much worse because all the people that I actually really trust and agree mostly with in reviews said they didn't enjoy it, that it wasn't what it was purported to be, and that spoiled them. It soured their taste of the film. When I went in thinking that it was going to be something different, and ended up absolutely loving this film. There's a lot to sort of wrap your head around, so much so that once I got out of the film, I was still thinking about it hours later. And that's always a sign, to me at least, of a really, truly good film. It makes you think and ponder and question intentions and meanings and what ifs, and yeah, it was great. All right, so let's get into it. This was written, directed, and produced by Jordan Peele. The cinematography was by Hoyt van Hoytema, and I say that because this is a beautiful film. A lot of it is shot in low light conditions, like you see on the poster right here. And let me just try to get out of the frame. A lot of it's shot in low light conditions, and so you shouldn't be able to see as much detail as you do. Now, this is the first and only thus far horror film, if it can even be called that, that was ever shot on IMAX. And so I saw it in an IMAX theater. I don't know if that makes it any better than my 4K TV, if I'm going to be 100% honest, but it was beautiful, and everything came through as crisp or as light as it was intended to, I can only assume. And the framing of the shots were absolutely stunning, and it really gave you a sense of scope. This was filmed in California, and so it was this sort of desert mountainous waste that you see often in old westerns. And so that's, a lot of people are saying this is more of a mashup of a western, a monster movie, UFO movie, and a comedy. And I completely agree with all of that. This is not a one-trick pony. If you're going into this expecting one genre to be exploited to the fullest, you're going to have your expectations destroyed because there's a lot going on. But on the other side of that, I don't personally think that's a bad thing at all. I think it's really important to be challenged and pushed as viewers to not just take things at face value. I like reading meaning and messages into content that's created, and Jordan Peele is a master at that. I mean, he's pulling from inspirations like Hitchcock in really wonderful and intuitive ways. So the music was by Michael Abels, and I also mention his name because this sound score, if you can think of the film as a series of characters, and we traditionally do, the cinematography is certainly a character. The location and the scenery is just, again, stunning. But the music design, the sound design, the score that was written is amazing in this. It really sets you up and disturbs you and primes you for what you're about to see, what you suspect you're going to see, and then what you actually don't see. And it keeps you on your toes, guessing and trying to figure out what's going on, as much as what's happening on screen does. And when you can sit down and become immersed in a scene where it seems like nothing's actually happening, but the music is telling you something different, it just heightens your awareness and your senses, and you're watching different parts of this massive screen to try to see, is something going to pop out? Is there something hidden in plain sight? And that is this film. Everything is hidden in plain sight. Okay. This was released the 22nd of July, 2022, and this is the logline. Two siblings who run a California horse ranch discover something wonderful and sinister in the skies above, while the owner of an adjacent theme park tries to profit from the mysterious, otherworldly phenomenon. This cast is led up by Daniel Kaluuya as Otis Jr., O.J. Hayward, Otis's son. Keke Palmer as Emerald M. Hayward, Otis's daughter. Steven Yeun is Ricky, or Jupe Park, a former child actor and owner, creator of the carnival Jupiter's Claim. Brandon Perea is Angel Torres, a tech salesman at Fry's Electronics. And Michael Wincott, who's great, is Antler's Holst. He is a renowned cinematographer. Now, there are a lot of different themes, but I am going to be spoiling this story. So if you have not seen Nope yet and you care about spoilers, turn this off, don't watch it, watch the film, come back and enjoy the diatribes that I'm about to go down, because this thing is packed full of really interesting thoughts, suggestions, references. I'm not going to get all of them. I just don't have the eye or the time, if I'm going to be 100% honest. But I'm going to give you what I noticed, what I thought was interesting, and then, sort of wrapping up what other people have said about this film. And we're just going to get into it all. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. That being said, the film actually opens with a sitcom audio track playing, and then it opens up with this scene of devastation on that sitcom with this monkey. I believe his name was Gordy, if memory is serving me. And I've only saw this yesterday too. And I should have recorded this yesterday, but I was doing other things, obviously. So Gordy the monkey murdered almost everyone. At this point, it looks like he murdered everyone on the set. And so we're left wondering, why the hell is it showing a sitcom, like straight up studio set with a monkey who clearly murdered everyone? What does that have to do with the alien, the UFO that we saw in the trailers? What does it have to do with anything? And it's actually really, really important, because that feeds into the narrative later on. It gives you justification for actions later on. And without that, it doesn't make sense why things happen later. So you have to have this tragedy unfold in order to truly comprehend what follows it. So then it cuts to OJ and M with their horse, at a studio for a film shoot or a commercial shoot or something. No one really likes this guy, OJ, because he's really quiet and drawn. OJ is a good old boy. I mean, he's a black good old boy, but he's definitely a good old boy. Their father built this ranch, and it's been general. I mean, he sort of inherited it from his great-great-great-great-grandfather, who was the first person in cinematic history to be on film riding a horse. Though the cinematographer of that footage, historically, you don't know the man riding it. It was their grandfather. And so they have this stake in this idea that they are the first, not only black-owned ranch and horse breeders and tamers and trainers, but also they're the first black family in history to be on film, and the first anyone in history to be on film. And that sets up this idea of exploitation, which is at the heart and soul of this entire film. So if you understand that this is about spectacle and exploitation, then you understand everything that's about to unfold. And that's why Jordan Peele really primed us at the very beginning with these two talking about their grandfather and the history of their ranch and the importance of it. We soon learn that something flew overhead in the clouds and dropped a bunch of change and keys, and it almost makes you think like it was like an airplane was crashing and stuff just flew out from the airplane, as if it was like Broken 2 or something, like Donnie Darko or something like that, right? Their father was looking up, sitting on a horse, and a nickel, I think it was, fell right into his eye and almost killed him on the spot. There was enough time to drag him to the hospital, where he passed away. But this meant that the ranch was in financial distress. And so OJ started selling his horses to Ricky Jupe Park, who owns this sort of what would you call it? It's a theme park, basically, called Jupiter's Claim. So he sells the horses to Jupiter's Claim, and he's going there in order to try to talk to him about repurchasing the horses back. And his sister is going with him, but she gets all caught up in the fact that Ricky Jupe Park is the child actor from that Gordy show about that massacre. And he has a bunch of memorabilia about the show and the massacre and sort of talks about it in these, almost fond ways, saying how, people spend tons and tons of money just coming to look at his memorabilia because it's that wonderful. And he talks about how SNL did a whole skit on it and how wonderful the skit was. But you can tell, as much as he is used to and excited about selling this idea of this merchandise and this event, there's something behind his eyes that actually really is still with him about it. And we don't really find what that is out until the last third of the film, but it's an important part. So it primes us to know that OJ and M are selling horses to this Jupiter's Claim theme park. They want to buy them back, but they're just in hard, dire straits right now, and they have to do what they have to do in order to keep the ranch going. What OJ notices on the actual ranch that night is he can see the arena in the far, far distance through these California mountains of Jupiter's Claim. And there's some sort of event going on nearly in the middle of the night. It's like 6 o'clock at night or something like that, but it's dark. And then he starts seeing something move through the clouds. And it freaks him out. The horse runs off. He can't find the horse. He goes chasing after the horse on his side-by-side. And he can actually hear the horse through the clouds, and the horse sounds terrified. Like he's never heard the horse sound like that before. So he goes back to the house and he tells his sister about what just happened. He's like, I just saw something fly through. And what it looked like was a sort of, like a pill-shaped UFO. And so he doesn't come out and say that's what it is, but he's alluding thus to his sister, and she immediately buys it. And she's like, look, we need to make some money off this, going right back to the exploitation and the spectacle. So the themes. So they go to Fry's Electronics, which, it's actually not even in existence at the time this film was supposed to be shooting, but that is not a big important plot point, but it's just a note. They go to Fry's Electronics to get a bunch of security cameras in order to catch this thing, whatever it is, this UFO of some form, on camera so they can then make money off of it. Exploitation. And they want to make sure they capture it in a way that has never been seen before, which is why they're going to these great lengths in order to get all of these cameras and all these different angles and stuff. Well, the Fry's Electronics guy named Angel Torres, the salesman, is just broke up with his girlfriend, which he uses as an excuse to be a total asshole to OJ and M. And basically tell him, like, look, you can't set this up on your own. You're going to need me to help you. And he's like, it's not like, this is rocket science, but it's a really difficult thing. And, if you want to get good coverage, you're going to need my help. They end up hiring him to do it. And then he ends up asking them to point the camera up at the sky instead of down at the actual ranch. And so he's like, what are you looking for? Aliens or something? And they don't say anything, and they sort of look at each other. And it turns out that he's a huge alien fanatic, as almost every other human is. And he if they really think they saw an alien here, like a UFO of some sort, he wants to see it too. And so he starts monitoring the footage, even though they told him not to monitor it. But it's the glue that binds these three unlikely people together. One interesting note about Angel Torres as the character and Brandon Perea as the actor. He does a great job, by the way. But he ended up changing the end of the film by appealing to Jordan Peele, his sensibilities about who this character is, what he would love to see happen with this character, and the potential for sequel material. And so Jordan Peele actually relented from his original script due to the passion in the actors' appeal to him. I thought it was a beautiful, you don't always get collaborative writer, director, producer, and actor teams together. When you do, you end up usually with gold. But, it's not something you see very often, especially when someone like Jordan Peele, who has a vision, who wants to tell a specific story. But the fact that he would pivot based on the appeal says a lot about Jordan Peele. A lot of good stuff about him, and the passion that Brandon Perea has for this story and this character. So the long and short of this is that they end up almost catching footage, but this praying mantis is like hanging out over the camera, and they ended up chasing down another one of the horses that sort of ran away, because every time this thing, we'll call it a UFO for now, comes by, all the wildlife freaks out, and if it's able to get out and run, it will get out and run. So they don't end up catching the actual footage, but what the Fry's Electronics employee finds out is that there is a cloud that doesn't move at all on the horizon line. So all the other clouds around it are moving by, but whatever this is, it's hiding in an actual cloud. So they end up stealing this plastic horse from Jupiter's Claim, the theme park, and it has like a bunch of flags attached to it, and you actually see it on the poster there, the cloud with the little string of flags hanging out. And that's this UFO, at the time is what we think it is, sucks up this plastic horse thinking it's a real one, and it sort of gums up this entity, and it just has this little flag hanging down. It gets really aggressive and really frustrated and sort of flies off. The next day, or maybe even the same day, Steven Yeun as Ricky Jupe Park comes over, and he's like, "Hey, where'd you get that horse? We have one very similar." And then we get, they sort of like blow him off, and he ends up leaving, but he invites them to one of his showings that we saw at the very beginning of the film from a very, very far distance. Sorry, I just got a text from my wife, and that totally threw my mind off. So they blow him off. They take the invite thinking they're not going to actually go to it, because why would they? They don't really care. They're just using him to temporarily, as they believe, buy their horses so that they can stay afloat in this ranch. So that night, we get probably one of the freakiest scenes I've seen on cinema in a little while. It actually got me going. It got my wife and my daughter going as we were watching it. Freaking us out a little bit. It was just this wonderful moment of inside his training facility, the power gets turned on. And he's the only one there at the moment, so OJ goes in to explore his ranch training building, turns the power off, he's looking around, it's all dark at night and quiet, turns around, walks away, he's walking out, and suddenly it turns back on. And he turns around, and there's this creature down on its haunches that slowly stands up and does these weird body movements that make it look almost mannequin-like or otherworldly, certainly, which is very freaky. And then, at a distance closer to OJ, another one creeps its head out sideways and then steps out, just sort of mimicking the creepiness of the first one. And that's where we get the first nope. And OJ turns around. He's like trying to get his phone, because he has one of those, older flip phones, and he's trying to record video. So he runs around the corner as he sees them coming toward him, and he just stops and he's waiting. And then slowly out of the edge of the training rink, the head creeps out. It is the creepiest moment of the entire film, but it's beautiful. And so he loses his mind, turns around, and right behind him, hanging in one of the doorways of the horse stalls, is another alien. So he immediately punches it out of reaction, because what else are you going to do? They're about to get you. It falls down, the mask falls off its head, it's a little kid. And all of them are little kids. And they're like, "Hey, stop messing with Jupiter's Claim. You stole property." And they like run away. So it turns out these are just three kids that are like, I think one of them, or maybe all of them, were the kids of Ricky Jupe Park and his wife, who run Jupiter's Claim, coming to basically put their foot down, saying, "Look, we know you stole our horse. Stop messing with our property." And that was it. But there was so much tension. There was so much terror built up in just that moment. It was beautiful. I loved it so much. So anyway, we know that it wasn't aliens, but there is something up there, right? As the story unfolds, we realize, and it's really through OJ's observance, that this thing is a creature. It's not a ship that's filled with UFO, like aliens. The ship itself is a creature. And because he respects wild animals, he was raised in order to respect horses as wild creatures and treat them as thus, with the respect they deserve. He understands you shouldn't probably look directly in the eyes of wild creatures. If you're going to try to tame them, you have to try to start, working through behavior and stimuli in order to tame these wild creatures like you do with horses. He has an idea about doing the same thing with this, monster, ostensibly. And really, he's seeing the part where it sucks things up into it as the eye, basically. So he believes at this point, if I look up in the eye, it's going to think of me as a threat and directly attack me. But while this is going on, that creature is still sort of prowling. It's territorial, and it's all around his ranch, thinking that that's its territory. And it's been happening for about 6 months. And this is a very specific amount of time for some strange unknown reason, which is about to be revealed. So they end up cutting over to Ricky Jupe Park, and he's getting ready for that, I don't know what you would even call it, that event that he invited the ranchers to. And he's sitting there sort of dazed out, reliving those TV, that Gordy sitcom back in his head, that tragedy that happened to him. So he's sitting there and he's seeing everything that we heard at the opening crawl of the film, but now we actually get to see it from the camera's perspective. And as soon as there's these balloons that are released for the monkey's birthday, one of them pops, and that just flips a switch in this monkey's mind, and he goes on a murdering rampage. Completely decimates everyone, and except for Ricky Jupe Park. And so he's hiding under a bed, and the monkey, after he winds himself down after murdering everyone, or it thinks it murdered everyone, it looks over at the boy, Ricky, signs to him what happened to the family, because it must have just gone to some insane part of its mind without ever thinking, some primal sort of lizard brain space. And so it moves over and tries to fist bump Ricky, which is sort of the thing that the boy and the monkey do, when suddenly a bullet comes from security and kills the monkey, which, talk about a suspenseful scene. Everyone jumped at that moment. It was terrifying because you didn't know if the monkey was going to kill the boy or what, and then suddenly it was stopped. It was just really, really brilliant. So, it's because of that moment, that seminal moment, like I said at the very beginning of this, that Ricky believes he's special. He was chosen. If this wild creature, this monkey, didn't attack him, maybe he has some sort of connection either with nature or with beasts of some sort. He found out about this monster, and he's been buying horses from OJ's farm and creating a show around feeding this monster the horses. It's really wonderful because that setup would not have made sense if Ricky didn't survive that monkey attack. He would never even thought about trying to tame this wild creature if he was saved by this wild creature, or if he wasn't saved by this wild creature, rather. Really, really great psychological dives into character, into psyche, and I really, really appreciated that they included that and not just, had him randomly trying to tame it, because that would have made no sense at all. So he's he's out there ready for the show. And he's like, look, this thing comes at 6 o'clock. You're going to lose your mind. This is irrefutable proof of alien intelligences. And I believe that they've come to me for a reason. But the creature comes early and it takes everyone. Now, at this point, OJ is rushing over to try to save his horse because he knows that it's going to try to kill it or eat it. And he gets to see this sort of moment where he can hear everyone trapped inside of this thing's basic stomach lining is how they sort of frame it. And he barely escapes because it tries to suck him up, but he dives into this sort of sheltered, stable space, and he ends up hitting his head on the roof of it as it tries to pull him up, and he just sort of falls unconscious, and it moves on because it really basically has a full belly at this point. It showed the inside from the people's perspective as they were sucked up into it. It was awesome. It reminded me a little bit of Fire in the Sky from when I was a kid. If you guys remember that film, it showed an alien abduction at the very last, I think it was like 2 or 5 minutes. It showed the actual alien ship. And so it was a little bit of that, but then it was also a little bit of like the very opening scene of Book of Boba Fett when he's crawling out of the Sarlacc pit. You just felt this sense of claustrophobia, and the people were losing their goddamn minds when they realized that they were going to be devoured by this thing, and that this wasn't a ship full of aliens. This was a monster, which is just terrifying and beautiful. And that's those screams that we heard at the very beginning of the film when OJ's father died. And basically all those coins and keys and stuff dropping out of it are all of the non-biological things that it can't eat. So it consumes the meat and it just dumps everything else. So then it goes back to the ranch where M and Antlers are. And, they're, of course, every time this monster is around, it emits this like electromagnetic field that shuts down all technology. And it terrorizes them because it's trying to get to them. It's trying to draw them out of the house. And so finally, OJ grabs his horse from Jupiter's claim and returns to his ranch, and he sees that it's right there. He now knows, as long as I don't look at it and act territorial and aggressive toward it, it might not attack me. That's his only hedge. He's hedging his bet. That's all he's got for this to not actually consume him. So he ends up just staying in there, and then it sort of hovers over him. That plastic horse falls out of it and like breaks through his windshield, scaring the shit out of him for a minute. And then it sort of goes away. He wakes up in the morning and he rushes out to find them, and then it comes back around. And the sound design for this monster is beautiful. It's terrifying. It's bold. It's creepy as shit. And again, the music mixing and score for this film are just phenomenal. It is just top-notch stuff. So we came into this thinking it was going to be an alien film or maybe an alien abduction film. We realized that no, this is actually just a monster movie. And this is a great big monster that's coming in and terrorizing these people. And it's about the spectacle and the exploitation of it. So Ricky Jupe Park is trying to use this monster, he thinks it's a UFO. He's trying to exploit it to sell tickets to keep his Jupiter's Park theme park afloat, or Jupiter's Claim theme park. And so he's exploiting this spectacle. Otis and Emerald are trying to exploit it by getting a picture of it so they can sell it to Oprah and, trying to get the best UFO footage ever. And so they're using that spectacle and trying to exploit the spectacle. And Antlers is with them. And so they go out and reach out to Antlers. I'm sorry, it was Angel Torres, not Antlers. They reach out to Antlers Holst, the cinematographer, who is a sort of wildlife photographer. He does some commercial and TV work and stuff, but his passion is for images that are impossible to find. He brings an old non-electronic, sort of rotary wheel camera in order to capture this beast. And they set up this entire trap area in order to capture the image of it. Best laid intentions pave the road to hell, right? That was a butchering of the old idiom. but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So they intend to exploit this really wonderful event, this imagery, this monster, as it were, and they end up calling the monster Jean Jacket. I have no idea, but I love it desperately. And as they're like hatching their plan, they have all these like, those the big wiggly people, like the flagmen outside of like car dealerships and stuff, where you have like air underneath and it's a big tube man that just sort of wiggles around like that. They have a whole bunch of those set up so they can find out where this monster is, because as soon as the fan turns off, they know that the electromagnetic pulse being emanated from the monster is nearby. So they can sort of track his movement that way, because it always seems to be cloudy and overcast whenever this damn monster comes out. So they're setting up in order to capture footage of this creature. And a TMZ guy in an electric motorcycle comes by for whatever freaking reason in order to find out about this alien that not only did Jupiter's claim seem to exploit, but now he's trying to for TMZ, for his own profit. And of course, he goes zooming down into the basin of the ranch toward it. And as soon as he hits that space of electromagnetic pulse, he flies off of his bike because it immediately turns off because it's electric. And he breaks his arm. And this whole time, he's trying to exploit this sensation by making money off of it, doing the exact same thing that OJ and M are doing. Well, everyone in the film thus far. And the downside is that he's not learning any lessons and he doesn't respect the monster. And so he, of course, ends up dying from it. And their entire best laid plan ends up flying in their face. So much so that in this final act, we see this monster in its full glory. And it sort of unravels itself in this biblical angelic form of this unbelievably large, unbelievably beautiful creature. And it just goes around like chasing them. Who is the biggest threat? And OJ is trying to save M, and M is trying to save OJ. And ultimately, M takes the electric motorcycle as soon as OJ draws the creature away from it long enough to get out of that pulse zone, takes that over to Jupiter's Claim theme park, and is going to try to use this sort of mechanical camera in the sky to capture it by unleashing this sort of blow up figure of this cartoon character, Jupiter's Claim. It just floats up in the sky. The alien entity, the monster, sees it as a threat, sort of attacks it. She gets the shot. The news people all come out because they see this massive, event unfolding in the sky. And they were already in the area because of the massive death that happened just earlier, as the alien killed all of the spectators and stuff. And then it ends up like consuming this balloon, which then pops and ostensibly kills this monster as it sort of floats away. Keke Palmer's character Emerald looks over across the way and sees her brother on their horse, at the entrance of the Jupiter's Claim theme park, and sort of looking at each other and doing this little, I see you, I love you type thing, is this familiar love thing. And that's really kind of the end. What we get is that everyone who does not respect the creature, the true threat the creature poses and tries to exploit the creature, ends up dying by the creature. And it's a large theme throughout this entire film of saying, and there's some irony in it too, because we as human beings are drawn to great spectacles. But it's because of us not being able to turn away from the spectacle or trying to see it with our own eyes that draws the spectacle's wrath down upon us. So it is our desire for the spectacle that is our own doom. Beautifully wrought out. I mean, you can pull that parable out to anything that's happened in history, from COVID-19, now with maybe monkeypox, to everything. I mean, that's just what we do as a human species. We will gladly put ourselves in harm's way for something amazing to look at. You know, you see it in like Independence Day with all the people trying to welcome the alien species at the top of the building. And that's when they shoot the big fire beam down and kill everyone. We are drawn to these great ideas of spectacle, and that is our own doom. But that's what we're doing as the film audience. We are watching this spectacle, and they are exploiting the spectacle by forcing us to pay for it in the theater. So not only is it our own doom, but it's also a sort of a lifeline for the monster. And so what is the monster? Is the monster the film industry? To keep it afloat, it has to create a spectacle to draw us in? How far out of the film is Jordan Peele really reaching? And there's some really interesting biblical notes of this as well that I read that I thought were just amazing. So I'm going to give it verbatim. This is all from, I don't have the name to attribute the guy. Well, I didn't say this. I'm taking it from someone else. He said that Jean Jacket, the monster, its true form is the resemblance to the biblical description of angels. He notes that the verse from Nahum prefacing the film as indicative of Peele's thoughts on the Bible, and how if one thinks about the way that Jean Jacket feeds and the concept of people ascending to heaven, one can connect the dots that Jean Jacket's species has been with humanity for a long time, and an attack from one of these creatures could be misinterpreted as something from the divine. So go with me here for a second, because this is the true beauty of possibilities of meaning behind this. So at the very, very beginning of the film, there's a quote from the Bible, and it's basically God telling Nahum about how he's going to destroy this city because it is evil. And so Nahum goes to watch this great spectacle, and he ends up, I'm not a biblical scholar, so I can't really remember how it ends, but it's this idea that the spectacle of destruction is what ultimately destroys the individual. But from a biblical sense, everything about the Bible is destruction. It is absolute terror, which is ironic that everyone says, God loves you when all he does is destroy everyone, and perpetuate destruction in every form. And hate, let's not forget that, the most important part probably, which is the heart of this. So what if this alien species, which when it is in its full glorious form, takes this semblance of an angel, what if all of our human history talking about God and people ascending to heaven is really just this creature sucking up food in the form of humans? And we've misinterpreted this entire human history time. Like, there's something really truly beautiful about that. We are so stupid as a species that we would see our own destruction and twist it into our salvation. That says much more about us as a species than it does about the monster that's doing the murdering. But I think it's apropos to what and who we are as a species. It's beautiful. And that's why when I go into this film and I watch and I hear people give me reviews and I watch reviews online and, I hear how people did not like this, I feel like they watched a different movie, because there's so much brilliance and thought and care that went into the crafting of this film and the messages that are buried and woven inside of the fabric of this film that just excite me, that give me a different perspective on not just the film, the motivations of characters, and the overall themes, but also our own human species. And that is the best possible outcome of a film, to make you second guess history, to make you, and not that I really think there's these monsters out there. It's the idea of it that I desperately love. It makes you second guess a lot of possibilities of religious movements, are all Abrahamic movements throughout all of history. I mean, that's pretty powerful to have all of that come out of one summer monster movie. Like, who does that? Oh man, I loved it so much. All right, so Again, it's all about spectacle and exploitation. The villain is this otherworldly threat, and it's also something that everyone has in common, everyone's relationship to the spectacle. It's our own desire that is the villain more than the actual monster itself. It's our human nature that's the problem. After Gordy exits his rampage, he's signed to young Ricky what happened to the family. I thought that was really interesting. These are little notes that I found online about the film. The alien's animal form is inspired by sea creatures, jellyfish, octopodes, squid, electric eels, and knife ghostfish. It's really beautiful the way it forms and the way it flows in its full form, and it has this really wonderful sort of hypnotic. It really reminded me of Jurassic Park, that creature that like spits acid after it, like has its head fins pop out and it starts like wiggling, and it spits acid at you and paralyzes you, then consumes you. That's what it reminded me of. But it was really fascinating, you know? I mean, this is one of those films, if you go into it knowing that it's going to subvert some of your expectations, but you just want to see a well-crafted film. I didn't think it was slow. I thought the cinematography and the sound carried every slow bit. But then I don't mind slow parts of films either, because it's usually when there's development. And that's the most important part of everything. Let me talk about some of these characters before we dive into closing this out. Oh, wow, I've already gone 40 minutes. Okay, so OJ, again, he is a good old boy. He is raised around horses. He understands wild animals. He respects them, and he meets them on their terms. He doesn't try to impose his own human will too much over them, which is why he's able to realize his own flaw with trying to exploit the spectacle of this monster, and then learn to respect the monster and survive because of it. His sister M is this quirky sort of comedic good cop, bad cop side of their relationship. She wants nothing more than to just exploit it, but she learns to respect it, in part because of how much it terrorized her, but also because she's always wanted to be a part of this ranch that her father really just gifted to her brother. He put all of his energy into him rather than her, and that always sort of made her resent that relationship and the ranch itself, and so she was always focused on going off and doing her own thing. And it's not until she gets back here, she sees the ranch through her brother's eyes, and the reminiscent of the heritage of this ranch through her grandfather, the stories that her father always told them both, that she can finally come to terms with what trying to exploit the spectacle really means. And she then stops. And it all comes about, and ultimately she's the one that does finally capture that unbelievable image of this alien entity as it attacks that big balloon comic character from Jupiter's Claim theme park. But I'd like to think that it's not because she wants to sell it. It's because at this point, it's all about survival and trying to find a way to keep the farm, to keep the heritage of their ranch in place. So rather than trying to sell it to go make money, to buy a mansion, to live some extravagant lifestyle, now it's literally a factor of survival. Not just her trying to survive the monster attack, but her trying to survive as a part of the family on the family land. And if that can be drawn from the situation, as I am, it's beautiful, you know? I mean, it's a complete 180 of her character. Rippy Juke Park, I think, is a brilliant type of a character. I think Steven Yeun does such a wonderful job with this character. His motivations are wrapped up in trauma. The terror that he experienced as a child carried through him for the rest of his life. And the first chance he gets to connect with some form of spectacle, he tries to exploit it, just like he was exploiting that monkey, which caused that monkey to destroy everyone. And he repeats history because he didn't learn the lessons of it. Just beautiful. Angel Torres, the tech salesman, his story's not over. Remember, he was the one that convinced Jordan Peele to let his character live, Angel, the character, live. And so I'm hoping we get to see him because, again, he learned that he shouldn't be exploiting this, even at the tail end, but he learned the lesson. So now if there's other monsters out there, if the monster they thought they killed, they didn't in fact kill, is still around, he can be that sort of glue to that future story to try to teach that same humility and respect to whatever else it encounters. And it could really change what was once a disgruntled Fry's Electronics tech employee and turn him into a fucking hero, which that type of character arc is massive, you know? And then, of course, Antlers Holst, who is that renowned cinematographer, that he died because he's saying that you guys don't deserve to get the footage of this beautiful creature. Only I do. And so he went out there to capture it himself, I think partly because he wanted to be consumed by it, because he was so consumed with his own desire to get that shot, to get that ferocious beast on film. He was willing to sacrifice himself for it. Now, I don't know if he understood that the film would probably survive because the monster doesn't eat anything except for organic matter, biological matter. So maybe he thought this was a last sort of swan song as a filmmaker. This is his greatest contribution to all of human history, to be able to capture this spectacle, and it ends up costing him his life. And whether that was worth it to him or not as a character is up in the air. But I'd like to think that, yeah, he knew what he was doing. He did it on purpose. And though I don't accept that, like I would never make that choice, I can, in some weird twisted part of my body, respect that he did. You know, I mean, everyone's a little bit different, sometimes wildly different. And I like that about humanity, even when it's self-destructive at times. And so that character I thought was really, really fascinating. He was all about the moment, the shot, and the lasting impact that film can have on humanity. And so I wouldn't go so far as to say it was sacrificial on his part, like he was, sacrificing himself for the greater good of humanity. It was really for his own name to go down in infamy, if there is any truth to any of that supposition at all. But yeah, those are the main characters that really stuck out in this film. And Jordan Peele, he started with Get Out, which was a wonderful statement about race in America, and I really appreciated that as a film. Us, I didn't like as much, but I really appreciated the themes of identity and humanity and what we actually are capable of as a species. And whether or not we even deserve to exist. I love those types of questions. And it seems to be a running theme that is thrown out there in a lot of his work. This third film, I thought he knocked it out of the park. So if I move on to like what my favorite part might be of this, it would have to be, I didn't even think about what my favorite part would be. It has to be the cinematography, the music, and the spectacle of it all. I love the interweaving of the themes of exploitation and spectacle that he put out there. I thought it was a brilliantly crafted film full of yet to be realized messages, and something that is this massive maze that if you just want to enjoy it on a surface level, okay, you can. It's great. If you just want to, appreciate it for the main theme, okay, yeah, it's great. You can. But if you want to dig deep, it's all there. And you can just dig until you hit the other side of the world because it is that rich. And I desperately love that. And only the really, truly great filmmakers out there can pull that off successfully. My least favorite part, I mean, the truth is that we didn't get any real solid answers. It's left for us to speculate. And as much as I do love that, that's like my most favorite part of this film. It's also my least favorite because when you think of a summer blockbuster, you want beginning, middle, end catharsis. You want to feel good at the end. And though we feel good because M and OJ survive and we like them, we still don't understand anything about the monster. And yeah, I don't need to always understand everything about the monster, but because of the complexity of the story, I really want to know. And so that's probably my least favorite part. If for no other reason, in a month or 6 months or a year's time, he doesn't drop an interview saying, okay, well, this is what I intended to say as a filmmaker, then I'm going to be really even more disappointed. I really love to understand what is behind a piece of art, because this is not art for art's sake. This is design. This is art with a message, art with an intention. And if that intention is just to make you speculate, well, then it wildly succeeded. But I suspect Jordan was actually saying something. He just doesn't want to come out and say it because, again, a lot of great filmmakers let the audience do the interpretation of their work because it's for the audience. So anyway, that would be my least part. And that part. And that's why, you know, when I come to give it my solid rating of Evil Eyes, I'm only going to give it 4 out of 5 Evil Eyes. Because as much fun and engaging as it can be for an audience to read into imagery, music, setting, mystery, it is really, really nice to understand exactly what was intended, and we don't get that. So I had to knock an eye out. I had to poke an eye out for that alone. But other than that, it was a great exploration of the film. And if you just want to go see a wonderful summer blockbuster that'll keep you thinking, this is it. All right. Well, that is it for my review of of Nope. It was so good. I still love this so much. All right. So thank you all so much for tuning in. If you're joining live or after the fact, let me know in the comments what you think about this film. Did it land for you? Did it leave you frustrated and unfulfilled? Let me know. Have a fantastic day. And as always, evil spelled backwards is live. So let's do a little bit of living, huh?